I never thought I'd be one of those guys posting about my train wreck of a marriage online, but here I am. Let me give you a little background before the chaos unfolds. My name is Josh, and my soon-to-be ex-wife, Emily, and I have been married for 7 years. We met in college, hit it off instantly, and from there, our relationship seemed like the perfect love story, at least on the surface. Over the past year, though, things started to change. Emily began working longer hours at her new marketing job, often coming home late or claiming she needed me time after a stressful day. I wanted to believe her. I truly did. But there were subtle shifts. She started keeping her phone on silent, taking it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. She suddenly had new lingerie that I'd never seen her wear for me. At first, I chalked it up to her trying to boost her self-confidence. Everyone deserves to feel good about themselves, right? But then came the fights. Small arguments about mundane things like the dishes or grocery shopping would escalate into her calling me controlling or accusing me of being insecure. One night, she told me she was going out with her friend Rachel. Rachel's a sweet girl who wouldn't hurt a fly, so I didn't think much of it. Emily came home at 3 a.m. reeking of alcohol and perfume that wasn't hers. When I asked her about it, she rolled her eyes and said, "You're being ridiculous, Josh." We went clubbing, and I had a bit too much to drink. Something about the way she dismissed me felt off, but I let it slide. I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous husband. Looking back, that was the beginning of the end, though I didn't know it yet. One thing was clear. The woman I married wasn't the same person standing in front of me now. Or maybe she was, and I'd just been too blind to see it. A few weeks after the Rachel incident, Emily's behavior became even more suspicious. She'd go out multiple nights a week, claiming she was hanging out with coworkers or unwinding from the stress of work. I tried to believe her, but my gut was telling me something wasn't right. Then came the night I found the envelope. Emily had left her laptop open while she was in the shower, and I noticed an email notification pop up. The subject line read, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Zoxo," and it wasn't from Rachel or anyone else I recognized. My stomach dropped, but I didn't immediately confront her. Instead, I started paying closer attention. That's when I found a crumpled-up envelope in her work bag. It was addressed to someone named Brian. Inside was a handwritten note. "Last night was incredible. Can't wait for the party this weekend. Love, Emily." I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. My mind was racing. Who was Brian? What party? My hands were shaking as I put the note back and zipped the bag shut. Emily came out of the shower a few minutes later, acting as though nothing had happened. I didn't sleep that night. While Emily snored next to me, I scrolled through her social media, trying to find any connection to this Brian guy. Nothing. It was as if he didn't exist online. But the note was real, and my instincts told me I wasn't imagining things. The next morning, I decided to do something I'd never done before. I installed a GPS tracker app on her phone. I hated myself for stooping to that level, but I needed answers. That Friday, Emily told me she was going to a work retreat out of town. She packed an overnight bag, kissed me on the cheek, and left. The tracker showed her heading to a suburban house about 30 minutes away. I waited an hour before driving there myself, parking down the street where I wouldn't be noticed. The house was lit up like there was some kind of party happening. People were coming and going, laughing loudly, carrying bottles of wine. And then I saw her, Emily, my wife, dressed in a way that left nothing to the imagination, holding hands with a tall, smug-looking guy I assumed was Brian. They disappeared inside the house, and I sat there, staring at the dashboard, trying to process what I'd just seen. My hands clenched the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. She wasn't at a work retreat. She wasn't with coworkers. She was at some kind of swinger party with another man. I wanted to storm in and drag her out of there, but I forced myself to stay calm. Instead, I took photos from a distance, documenting everything. If this was going where I thought it was, I needed proof. Little did I know, things were about to get a lot worse. Emily didn't come home that night. When she finally walked in the next morning, cheerful and polished, I was waiting. "How was the retreat?" I asked, barely masking my anger. "Boring seminars," she replied casually, avoiding my gaze. "Boring enough to spend the night at Brian's?" I shot back, holding up the GPS data and photos I'd taken of her at the party. Her face froze for a moment before she smirked. You were tracking me? That's creepy. Don't turn this on me, I snapped. Who was Brian? What were you doing at that party? Her shrug was infuriating. Brian's a friend. We're adults. Maybe if you weren't so boring, I wouldn't need to hang out with him. And the swinger party? It was fun. Something you'd never understand. Her indifference was unbearable. Do you even care about this marriage? She laughed. Marriage? Josh, grow up. We're done. I stormed out, seething. Minutes later, I got a call from the private investigator I'd hired. Josh, he began gravely. There's more. Emily's been with multiple people at these parties. And there's footage. Her face is blurred, but it's definitely her. This could cause problems if it leaks. My world spun. Emily hadn't just betrayed me. She'd torched everything we had. It was time to end this, but not without making her face the consequences. The investigator's call was the last straw. Armed with the photos, GPS data, and the bombshell about the recordings, I walked back into the house. Emily was lounging on the couch, scrolling her phone like nothing had happened. We need to talk, I said, my voice icy. She barely glanced up. What now? I dropped the evidence on the coffee table in front of her. This. You've been lying, cheating, and humiliating me for months. I know everything, Emily. She looked at the pile of evidence, her expression blank for a moment, then leaned back with a smug smile. So, what do you want me to say? You've already decided I'm the villain. You don't even deny it? I said, incredulous. What's the point? You're so obsessed with playing detective that you don't see the bigger picture. Maybe if you weren't such a boring husband, I wouldn't have needed to find excitement elsewhere. Her words were venomous, and her lack of remorse hit me like a slap. You destroyed our marriage, Emily, I said, my voice shaking with anger. She rolled her eyes. Oh, please. Stop being so dramatic. People grow apart. Maybe you should take this as a wake-up call to be better next time. Next time, I repeated, stunned by her callousness. Yes, Josh. Next time, because I'm done with you. This marriage was dead long before Brian showed up. Her words solidified everything for me. There was no saving this. But as she sat there, unapologetic and smug, I realized she didn't expect me to fight back. I leaned in, staring her down. You're going to regret underestimating me, Emily. She laughed. What are you going to do? Cry about it? But she had no idea what was coming. Emily's smugness fueled my determination. She thought she could walk away unscathed, but I wasn't about to let her waltz off into the sunset with no consequences. That night, while she was out clearing her head, I started putting my plan into motion. First, I called the investigator. I need everything you have on Emily, every document, every detail, I said firmly. You've got it, he replied. What's the next step? Divorce. But I want to make sure she doesn't see a dime more than she's entitled to. And if there's a way to make her explain herself in court, I want that too. By the next morning, I'd contacted a lawyer who assured me that with the evidence I had, infidelity, reckless behavior, and her involvement in those parties, I had a strong case to protect my assets. The next phase was trickier. The investigator had mentioned recordings from the swinger party, though Emily's face was blurred. I didn't want to stoop to her level, but I needed leverage. If she tried to play dirty during the divorce, I wanted something that would stop her in her tracks. The most satisfying part of the plan came when I canceled her access to our joint bank account. I'd been the primary earner for years, and everything was in my name. Emily wouldn't see it coming. Then I waited. That evening, she strolled back into the house like nothing had happened. I think we should separate, she announced, as if it were her idea. Oh, we're separating, I replied calmly. But I've already filed for divorce. Her confident demeanor faltered. What? I'm done, Emily. You wanted to burn this marriage to the ground? Fine. But you're not walking away without facing the consequences. She scoffed, but I could see the unease in her eyes. You think you can scare me? You're pathetic, Josh. You'll find out just how pathetic I'm not, I said. I had no intention of letting her walk away clean. The next few days were chaos. Emily didn't take the divorce filing seriously at first, but that changed quickly. When she tried to use the joint credit card for her usual shopping spree and found it declined, she came storming into the house. "What the hell, Josh? Why is the card not working?" she barked. "I removed your access. You've been funding your escapades on my dime for long enough," I replied coldly. Her face twisted in anger. "You can't do that. I'm your wife." "Not for much longer," I shot back. Emily's bravado started to crack. She accused me of being petty and vindictive, but I didn't care. My lawyer assured me that since everything was in my name, she had no legal claim to the accounts or assets beyond what the court might decide in the divorce. Then came the real blow. The investigator sent me the full report. Emily and Brian had been attending these parties for months, and she wasn't just a participant, she was a regular. There was footage of her and Brian, along with several others, engaging in things I won't even describe. While her face was blurred in some of the recordings, her voice and unique tattoos made her unmistakable. Armed with this evidence, I met with my lawyer again. We filed an updated petition, citing her behavior as grounds for divorce. The lawyer also sent her a formal letter warning that if she tried to challenge me on financial terms, the recordings and evidence could be used against her in court. When Emily received the letter, she exploded. "You're blackmailing me?" she yelled, pacing the living room. "No, I'm protecting myself," I said calmly. "You made your choices, Emily. Now you'll live with the consequences." She tried every trick in the book, crying, apologizing, even pretending to want to work things out. But I wasn't falling for it. The crocodile tears didn't match the woman who'd mocked me days earlier. The final straw came when Brian showed up at our house. He had the audacity to stand on my porch, smirking like he owned the place. "We need to talk about Emily," he said. "There's nothing to talk about," I replied, stepping outside and closing the door behind me. Brian's grin faltered as I leaned in. "Stay away from me, my house, and my life. If you think you're going to walk away from this unscathed, you're as delusional as she is." I turned and walked back inside, slamming the door in his face. Emily was sitting on the couch, glaring at me. "This isn't over," she hissed. "Oh, it's over," I said. "You just don't know it yet." Emily's defiance only fueled my resolve. I wasn't going to let her walk away from this unscathed, especially after her smugness and Brian's little stunt. First, I sent her an official notice to vacate the house. My lawyer made it clear. As the sole owner, I had every right to ask her to leave. She had 30 days to pack up and find somewhere else to live. Emily, of course, was furious. "You're kicking me out of my home?" she screamed. "It's my home, Emily," I said, ice in my voice. "You're welcome to go live with Brian or whoever else you've been entertaining." Her reaction was priceless. She stomped out, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. But my revenge wasn't just about kicking her out. It was about ensuring she faced the full weight of her actions. The investigator had dug up more than I'd anticipated, and it turned out Brian wasn't some harmless fling. He had a reputation, and not a good one. Let's just say his business ventures were shady, and his connections were questionable at best. I tipped off someone I knew in law enforcement, anonymously, of course. Within a week, Brian was being investigated for tax evasion and fraud. Word got back to Emily, and she was livid. "You did this, didn't you?" she snarled, cornering me in the kitchen. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said with a smirk. Her frustration was almost comical. She was losing control of everything, and she knew it. But the icing on the cake came when I exposed her antics to her family and friends. I sent them a carefully worded message, complete with the evidence of her infidelity and her involvement in the swinger parties. I kept it factual and straightforward, making sure there was no room for her to spin it into a sob story. Her parents, who had always been polite to me, were mortified. Her mother called me in tears, apologizing for Emily's behavior. Her social circle turned on her, too. Apparently, many of her friends didn't know about her extracurricular activities and weren't impressed. Emily tried to confront me again, calling me vindictive and cruel, but I didn't care. For the first time in months, I felt like I was regaining control of my life. The divorce papers were finalized a few weeks later. Emily walked away with far less than she expected, and she had no choice but to move in with Brian, assuming he hadn't been arrested by then. As for me, I changed the locks, got rid of everything that reminded me of her, and started rebuilding my life. Once Emily was gone, the house felt different, quieter, lighter. For the first time in years, I could breathe. The divorce was finalized swiftly, thanks to the mountain of evidence against her. She got next to nothing, and any attempts she made to drag things out were shut down by my lawyer. Brian? He was in deep trouble. The investigation into his shady dealings escalated, and last I heard, his assets were frozen. Emily, now tied to him, was left scrambling to deal with the fallout. Poetic justice, if you ask me. I focused on rebuilding. Therapy helped me process the betrayal, and reconnecting with old friends reminded me of the life I put on hold for Emily. Slowly but surely, I was moving forward. The best part? Knowing Emily's lies and betrayal had caught up to her. She was now living the consequences of her choices, while I was free to start over. Looking back, I'm not the same man I was when this all began. Emily's betrayal broke me, but it also forced me to reevaluate everything. I learned to trust my instincts, stand up for myself, and never let anyone take advantage of my kindness again. If you're reading this and find yourself in a similar situation, here's my advice. Trust your gut. If something feels off, don't ignore it. Gather evidence. You'll need it to protect yourself legally and emotionally. Don't tolerate disrespect. Love isn't an excuse for betrayal. Take back control. Focus on rebuilding your life. You deserve better. Emily thought she could get away with everything, but she underestimated me. In the end, she lost her friends, her reputation, and the comfortable life we built together. As for me, I've reclaimed my peace, and I'm finally free of her toxic shadow. Life goes on, and I'm ready for whatever comes next.